Here, I'm going to slam the ground, rending it apart with lines of fire. Any slam skill will then cause these fissures to erupt with lava. I can even run through them with a skill like Stampede to do huge amounts of damage.
Welcome back, you filthy exiles! So I didn't upload a video yesterday, so that was unorthodox for me. Anyway, so obviously we've seen like 1,000 different videos of the ascendancies, right? So I'm not gonna like compress this into like one video and be like, this ascendancy does this, without understanding what the hell's going on, right? I'm not going to give you like any specific like build, like I guess guide sort of things here as well in this video. What I am going to do is talk through the ascendancy, in particular the ascendancy, sorry, for the warrior, so the Titan and the Warbringer. At the very end of the video, I'm going to give you 5 potential build ideas that you could roll with. One that I didn't realize you could do until I started looking at the ascendancies, and I went, that's freaking wild. But anyway, so stay tuned until the ending part of the video, or you can skip it down below. I'll put the timestamps in the video and the YouTube sort of thingamabob. But anyway, let's get into it. Let's talk about the warrior ascendancies, and in particular, these are the 2 that I'm the most excited for. And if you guys like this type of video, I'll do this for every one of the ascendancies over the next day, or as many as I can do in a day, and we can go from there. Anyway, let's get into it. Also, if you haven't liked and subbed to the channel, make sure you do that. Anyway, let's get into the video. Okay, so the first ascendancy that we have on the warrior is the Titan, and arguably the best ascendancy in the game, if I don't say so myself. Anyway, so why do I like this ascendancy, and what is really good about this ascendancy, and where do we go from here? Okay, well, number 1, stone skin is awesome, okay? So 50% more armor to equip body armor. Now, according to the original leaks, this has been nerfed. It was double originally, but they made it 50% more. I still think this is a really good stat. I don't really think this was like any sort of nerf, because at this stage of the game hasn't been released to be nerfed. So it's just simply in flux, right? So 50% more armor, good, right? I'd give that a tick of approval. Ancestral empowerment, sorry. Every second slam you use yourself is ancestrally boosted. Now, this is very similar to a ascendancy that was in Path of Exile 1. I think it was like Tao's Slam, something like that. It was on the Chieftain originally. And basically, if you're slamming a lot, this is going to be really powerful. So this is going to be pretty much 4 specific slam builds. I think there is a place for this, and I think in certain builds that capitalize, maybe Giants, was it Giant's Bane or Giant's Blood? Dual two-handed or two-handed weapon wielding builds are probably going to benefit from this if they're rolling like slam skills like Sunder and stuff like that. So I think this is pretty good. Earthbreaker, I like Earthbreaker. Now 2 is here, and then 3 is up here, right? And to be honest with you, between Earthbreaker and Ancestral Power, there's a compelling argument that you play this on every single slam skill, because you get, with Earthbreaker, 20% chance for slam skills you use to cause aftershocks, which is going to give you increased AoE damage, and also could potentially cap out a boss and kill it, even though your first slam didn't. You know, your aftershock might if it triggers. Also, just like that initial, like every second slam, so you're going to do like maybe a slam to proc some ailments like armor break or something like that, and then you're then going to hit it with the real slam to do all the damage. Like, you think about this, if you had like Supercharged Slam on this could be totally ridiculous. Now, number 4 is a totally useless node. Colossal Capacity gives you 20 inventory slots. This is the old like rucksack from Path of Exile 1. I don't know why they put this in the game. I can sort of understand it, maybe if this character was a mule, but this character is going to be like in the fight a lot, even in parties. So this is a not so good point. However, hulking form is fantastic. So 50% increased effect of small passive skills. Now, I don't know what this means to people. It probably won't mean much to people who haven't played the game before, but there is a very strong, compelling argument to do attribute stacking in Path of Exile 2, partly because the new jewels that are added to the game allow for this exact effect, for example, to be added in a radius of the jewel as they travel through the tree, which will allow you to easily stack more attributes, like strength in this case is probably going to be beneficial. And then potentially you could double dip this as well. So this would be like 50% increased effect of small passive skills. That to me reads as like, maybe that's the small passive skill. Yeah, so that would be like, you know, for example, like your strength would be 7.5 instead of 5, for example, something like that. That's what that reads to me. Or your small passive skills, you could actually do an entire build based off small passive skills and not take any notable skills, for example. And potentially there could be an item in the game, and we don't know this yet, where you get a benefit from only running small passive skills, and then you could juice them up with hulking form. And thinking on that, that's something that GGG would Machiavellianly put in the game just to screw with the players, and that could actually be a really cool build. But I do like this node, and it's probably something I'm going to test at a certain point in time. Crushing impacts is where my love sits for it, and basically crushing blows with heavy stun on enemies that are primed for stun, right? So crushing blow is going to be almost like a cull, like a big increase to DPS. This is what I'm going to be running on my build that I'm going to be rolling out with, because I feel like this is going to be really strong, and I like stuns. Stuns I feel like are going to be really powerful in Path of Exile 2. Then we got Surprising Strength, which is 7. That's followed up, so 40% more damage against heavy stun enemies. Leading on to, as long as you're priming enemies for stun, you're getting Crushing Impacts, and then you're getting Surprising Strength with 40% increased damage. This feels like an absolutely perfect combination to cause pure chaos, right? And they also elaborate on heavy stun here. Hitting an enemy builds towards heavy stun based on damage dealt. Different enemies have different heavy stun thresholds and durations. With very large monsters having a high heavy stun threshold, players cannot be heavy stun, which is good, so we can't be heavy stun. While an enemy is heavy stun, they cannot act and count as immobilized, and this also counts for bosses as far as I'm aware, because we can now stun bosses. Physical damage and melee damage dealt each cause 50% more heavy stun built up. These bonuses are multiplicative with each other, right? So basically, Surprising Strength is going to be surprisingly powerful, and I'm super keen to use it. So right now, the nodes that I'm looking at predominantly will be number 1, Stone Skill, and then moving into 6 and 7 for my shield build that I'm looking at. And then lastly, we've got Mysterious Lineage. I sort of like this one because if you're playing a tankier build, you've got the best of both worlds. Stone Skin, Mysterious Lineage gives you 15% maximum life, which may well be a very good amount of life. It's going to make you pretty tanky 100%, at least initially. Maybe you can take it out later if you don't need so much HP, if you've got more armor. Just depends on how stats for defense work, and this is another big question mark. Like, we just don't know enough about how defense works currently to be able to speculate through the teeth of whether or not, you know, 5,000 HP or life is still like the average amount of HP you want on a build. Maybe 3,000 is good enough, but this is something that we're going to have to find out as we play through the game. That being said, my favorite nodes here are pretty much number 1, number 6, number 7, and number 8. Okay, so the second one we've got here, and I know I say the word okay a lot, I'm Australian, so, you know, you got to give me some credit for that. But anyway, it's the Warbringer. Now, I don't dislike the Warbringer. I actually think the Warbringer is really good. Number 1, Anvil's weight is really cool. So break armor equal to 10% of hit damage dealt. There's definitely a place for this. If you do higher hit damage, then basically you're going to break armor a lot easier. And there are things where, there are support gems where you can totally explode armor if you hit them hard enough, and you can do that. So I really like this. Imploding impacts, you can break armor below 0, which means you can have a negative stat, which is going to give you a pretty significant amount of damage. Now you would go from 1 to 2. I would say if you're going to run like an armor break build, like Bone Shatter armor break could actually be a thing. And then basically you could explode the armor off enemies and then smash them with Bone Shatter or something of that nature. That could definitely work. Jade Heritage, I'm on the bench about. So this guy gives you Encase in Jade, gain a stack of Jade every second. Consumes all stacks of Jade to grant a buff for a duration that absorbs all damage from hits to a maximum based on the amount of Jade consumed. While Encase, you cannot move or perform actions. I don't necessarily think that's the greatest thing in the world. But potentially we could modify this skill because we can socket support gems into this to actually make this a little better, or have a reduced duration or something like that, make it more potent potentially. This is one that we're just going to have to test. Answered Call is a really interesting ascendancy, and let me explain. This is a, pardon me, this is a minion ascendancy. So basically what it means is each of your totems will summon an Ancestral Spirit minion to fight for you. If the totem that summoned the minion dies, then the Ancestral Spirit will too. So there's a couple of things to unpack here. It does not set a limit, which means if you can summon a ton of totems, you can have a ton of minions, right? So that means that potentially Ancestral Bond is a really useful node in basically getting this to work. It'll allow you to summon a totem for every 100 spirit, totems reserve 100 spirit each, right? So you can summon an unlimited number of totems. So basically your minion limit is totally capped on how much spirit you get at the end of the day. So if you could get spirit reservation efficiency in your build, and then essentially stack up minion damage, and then stack up totem life, then potentially you could do a totem minion summoner, right? Which I think is really cool as a concept. I don't know if that would actually work at this stage. It's just something I'm speculating, but new ridiculous summoning build on the Warbringer, right? Which would be pretty crazy. Then we have got Wooden Wall. Now there seems to be a lot of like shield skills on this, but obviously totem skills, but Wooden Wall is 20% of damage from hits is taken from your nearest totem life. This would actually synergize perfectly with Answered Call, and I'm pretty sure there is a sequence here. So you go from 4, you actually just go from 4 and 3. You could actually really use this to be a really good damage mitigator. This is probably going to be better to use than Jade Heritage. Then we've got Renly's Training, gain 40% base chance to block from equipped shield instead of the shield's value. So arguably this would be okay if you're picking up shield or block nodes, in your passive tree. So this, like, block is going to be a pretty good stat as far as defense goes in Path of Exile 2, as far as what we've seen. So arguably this is not too bad. Turtle Charm, 35% less block chance, can block damage from all hits while shield is not raised, which is interesting. I don't know what that means. So anyway, yeah, maybe that's like, maybe that's 100% block, like it's 100% effectiveness of block, but then it's got 35% less block chance. Turtle Charm's an interesting one. We're just gonna have to see how this feels and how this works. I feel at the end of the day. I like Warcaller's Bellow and Great Wolf's Howl. There's a couple of reasons why, and number one is Singer builds are potentially a thing in Path of Exile 2. Now I did try like a Singer build in Path of Exile 1, which was Corrupting Cry. I wouldn't have recommended it, and I don't think I would recommend that in Path of Exile 2 because it relies on stacking Corrupted Blood, and we really don't know if that's going to be an effective means of outcome in Path of Exile 2. The other problem in Path of Exile 1 is it required an item called the Forbidden Shaco to get the gem level high enough to make that effective. That being said, like, you could 6-link it in Path of Exile 2, but even if you 6-linked it in Path of Exile 1, it still wouldn't be that great because it was predicated on gem level, unless you can get the gem level up on Corrupting Cry, if that's in the game, but it doesn't. I don't believe it's in the game. I haven't seen it yet, at least. What I would actually say would be a better setup would be like Warcry, basically dropping multiple Warcries, and then I don't know if it's in the game and it's speculatory right now, but potentially there could be support gems for Warcries that enhance the damage based on the number of Warcries you've recently used. This is very similar to how Retaliation builds were structured in Path of Exile 1. So the other big thing here is like Seismic Cry has base physical damage, right? So with Great Wolf's Howl, you have no Warcry cooldown. You could just keep popping it, or you could just like go piano key Warcries and just blow shit up all around you, right? That's totally a possibility with this sort of setup. Anyway, I feel like there's going to be some cool builds. I definitely want to invest time into that, and it's something that I'm going to play with. And it also Answered Call with minion summoning using totems is something that I really want to sort of investigate as well when I get into this Ascendency. Okay, so as promised, I'm not going to give you like build guides for this. This is like totally speculation, right? So we haven't played the game. We've got to play the game before we can make the builds, right? That's how this works. Anyway, but I do have some ideas that you could like mash skills together. Now, the way that I view builds in Path of Exile 2 is, while there are a number of skills that amalgamate together, you're going to be still building around like 1 or 2 primary capstone skills, right? I'm going to call them capstone skills. Basically, your rest of your skills are going to work around those 2 skills, right? And those 2 or 3, maybe even 4 skills are going to be the skills that do a lot of the grunt work in your build, and everything else is just going to synergize with that based on feel and whatever else, right? So in this case, the first one is obviously the one that I'm going to try, which is shield wall, and resonating shield on the Titan. Basically, the idea of this build is, and we're going to use stuns with this, but the idea with this is to use stuns to empower attacks, but also use Earthquake to proc Jagged Ground, and then essentially hit Shield Wall up, which will raise Earthbend Ground out of the ground, and then use Resonating Shield to then bash your shield, send out a shockwave, and blow that wall up, right? And so my idea here is basically then that's going to proc up stuns, and do a ton of damage, potentially to bosses and whatnot. And potentially we can also do a wall that's all around our character, and that could be a defensive stat as well for AoE and things like that, or when we've got like a lot of enemies around us. I don't know how that's going to feel. We probably will still need to put in like a big skill, like Hammer of the Gods or something with a weapon switch, which is what I'm thinking. And basically that's going to be like our last hit on the boss sort of skill. But yeah, I think this is a really cool concept, and it could really work. The second idea that I've got is, again, Titans. So I've got a couple of Warbringers here and a couple of Titans, right? So the second one is like your classic two-hander slam Titan. Now, I'm really erring towards the idea of using supercharged slams. I think supercharged slams and charge-up slams as an overall could be really cool. Basically, the idea with this is you're going to use like rolling slam and stuff like that to maximize your amount of armor break to basically set up your supercharged slam, and then you're going to want to try to put in like things like infused channeling if that still exists in Path of Exile 2, and anything else to totally ramp up the supercharged slam, but also reduce its charge time or channel time as well. And then basically you could run like armor break, explode, and stuff like that in this configuration. But yeah, I think supercharged slam, if you could get this like working a lot faster, this could be really, really cool to just like supercharge slam entire maps. Now with this, you'd just run like a standard two-handed mace or something like that. So you probably want to stack a lot of armor on the build because you're not going to really be focusing on block because you won't have a shield. But yeah, this would be something really simple and easy for people to sort of get into. Based in my head, like sometimes building simpler builds when you first pick up a game are better. Like I look at other Ascendancies and I feel like the Warrior is just going to be a way better scaled initial sort of archetype of, for builds and whatnot for newer players, because basically you're just going to like build a tanky character, build up DPS and go hit things really hard. That seems like a really good playstyle to me, and in particular for newer players. Okay, so you saw this at the very start of the video in the B-roll from the footage that was released, but Volcanic Fissure Slam Titan, right? So basically you're gonna rock out, drop Volcanic Fissure on the ground, and then use things like Sunder or Stampede to then proc Volcanic Fissure, and the main damage dealer is going to be the Volcanic Fissure that runs on the ground and inflicts big AoE damage. In this case, I'd probably use like Avatar of Fire to convert the physical damage to fire damage to proc that further. Also, I think there's a skill in the game called Perfect Strike. I'll just double check that, sorry. Yeah, Perfect Strike, which basically is a channeling skill, which could synergize with this as well. It lets out like a jet of flame. And again, this could be really useful. Infernal Cry is going to be probably the best war cry to use on this. And then like Herald of Ash and stuff like that. So this is going to be a very fire-based warrior build, but just something to think about. Like, it seems really cool, like you're slamming the ground down with volcanic fissures and then like running and jumping over the top of them like a hooligan and just blowing stuff up all around you. And it could be really good at bosses as well. All right, so the next one is Ancestral Warrior Totems on the Warbringer using Earthshatter, right? And then using war cries in unison with Warcaller's Bellow and Great Wolf's Howl Ascendancies to blow the spikes created by the totems up. This could be a really cool idea. So basically the way that Earthshatter worked in the past is that you would basically bring up your Earthshatter, like your spikes. You get 5 spikes that sort of pop up around your character. In this case, they will pop up around the totems. And you will want more than one totem, so you're probably going to want to go for Ancestral Bond again with this setup. Now, Ancestral Bond, from what I can see here, doesn't stop you from being able to, like, proc... Like, you could have many totems, right? So there's a lot of shotgunning here. So basically, if you could get enough totems up and then scale enough damage, right, you could actually like run a ton of totems, drop them down, have them all hit with Earthshatter, and then you could then run up with a Warcry and just explode all the Earthshatter modules off on enemies or on a boss. So it sort of seems like this could cheese a lot of damage if left unchecked, and it's going to be really interesting to see how hard it's going to be to stack up multiple totems on the Warbringer or the Warrior. But yeah, this could be another really cool build idea. So basically, stack a ton of totems, get them all to like hit the ground with Earthshatter, and then basically Earthshatter brings up all the spikes, and then you're going to run in with like Seismic Cry, and then Warcry in the center of all the spikes, and basically just keep slamming the button. And the big plus here is you automate the ability for the totems. You're simply just like kicking the ground to bring the totems up, and that's earth-shattering for you and auto-targeting enemies. And then you just like sit in the center and Warcry like an idiot and basically blow everything up. It just seems like a really cool idea. Okay, so the last idea is obviously an Ancestral Spirit Army. Warbringer. Basically, we spec into Ancestral Bond as the keystone passive on the tree again, and then we maximize towards Spirit Reservation Efficiency on the pathing tree so we can bring up as many totems as we possibly can. Then we're going to want to focus on minion nodes where we can, so we would probably go towards the witch area in this case. So you go upwards on the tree, and then basically the goal is to get as many totems on the field as you possibly can with minions, juice the minions up and juice the totem HP up, and then basically have the totems pull aggro from you as like the summoner, the totem summoner. And then essentially, yeah, it'll work like the old Black Zenith build in Path of Exile 1, where you used to use vitality totems to like aggro the enemies, and then the totems will do all the damage for you. So if you make really tanky totems in this case, they're going to tank the damage for you, or any damage that comes in, they'll take damage for you, and then they'll be basically pulling aggro off you. So as long as you can keep your totems alive, then potentially your minions could be really powerful. We don't really know enough about these minions either, but we do know that they can be 6-linked, right? Because it counts as a skill in your skill tree. So you could actually run like all minion skills in this setup and then just have these guys just like going crazy all over the place. Potentially these could be like the spirits that are shown in the Warbringer with like the hounds or whatever, or they could be like Kurui warriors or like the old General's Cry warrior sort of thing. But yeah, I'm really interested in this. This sort of feels like a build that I would play as my second build, because this seems like a really interesting concept. A totem summoner. Yeah, just like let that sink in. I don't know why I thought about that, but it just sticks out to me as something that's really cool. Okay, so just with this video, if you like this, don't forget to like and sub to the channel, the Twitch, the X, and also anything else that's in the socials below. Patreon, if you want to follow on Patreon, you're also welcome to do that. Support the channel. Now, that being said, if you want to see more videos like this, where we sort of dig into 5 ideas, we go through the ascendancies, we just talk it through, we dig into 5 cool like build ideas or something of that nature, and talk about some of the mechanical interactions, then let me know in the description below which ascendancies you want me to cover off on. I want to do like, if we're going to do witch, we're going to do like both the witch ascendancies and then talk about 5 potential builds across the 2. Same with like the monk or whatnot. I don't think I've got enough time to do all the last 5. So maybe pick the top 2, put them in the description below or the comments below, and let me know, and I'll come up with some build ideas, because there's a lot of stuff that we can do in Path of Exile 2. It's a super creative game. Anyway, I'll see you guys later, and have a good one.